What if I told you that a simple white crystal, something you sprinkle on fries without thinking, once controlled empires, decided wars, and determined who lived comfortably and who starved? Not gold, not diamonds, not oil, salt. At one point in history, soldiers were paid in it, cities were built around it, and entire economies collapsed when its supply was disrupted. Kings guarded it, smugglers died for it, governments taxed it so heavily that rebellions exploded. And here's the real mystery. Why would something so common today be more valuable than gold back then? To understand that, we have to go back to a world where survival itself depended on salt and where controlling it meant controlling people. Setting the stage, why salt mattered before refrigerators, before preservatives, before global trade networks. Human survival had one brutal limitation: food spoiled quickly, meat rotted, fish decayed, crops failed with seasons. If you couldn't store food, you starved. Salt changed everything. Salt could preserve meat for months, even years. It stopped bacteria. It allowed armies to march, cities to grow, and trade to exist across long distances. Without salt, large civilizations simply could not function. Gold was wealth, salt was life. This distinction is critical, and it explains why salt wasn't just a commodity, but a strategic resource, tightly controlled by power. Origin: salt as survival currency. The story begins over 8,000 years ago. Early humans discovered that animals were drawn to salty areas: salt licks, coastal rocks, mineral springs. Humans followed. They learned that salt wasn't just edible, it was essential. Your body needs sodium too. Regulate fluids, transmit nerve signals, contract muscles, stay alive. Without salt, humans die. Slowly and painfully. In early societies, salt sources were rare and geographically limited. Some regions had mines, others had coastlines, many had neither. This created an imbalance, and imbalance creates trade. Salt became one of the first long-distance traded goods in human history. And where trade exists, power soon follows. The rise: salt builds empires. As civilizations grew, salt became the foundation of economic and military power. Rome, salt and soldiers. The Roman Empire understood salt better than anyone. Roman soldiers were sometimes paid in salt allowances called salarium, the root of the modern word salary. Why? Because without salt, soldiers couldn't preserve food, armies couldn't travel, conquests failed. Rome built entire roads like the Via Salaria specifically to transport salt from mines to the capital. Control salt, and you control the army. Control the army, and you control the empire. China, state monopoly. In ancient China, salt was so important that the government declared it a state monopoly as early as 600 BCE. Why would a government monopolize salt? Because it was essential to life, impossible to replace, consumed by everyone. By controlling salt production and pricing, Chinese dynasties funded armies, infrastructure, and bureaucracies for centuries. In fact, salt taxes financed major portions of the Great Wall. Gold funded luxury, salt funded the state itself. The breaking point: when salt became a weapon. When something is essential and monopolized, abuse is inevitable. The salt tax in France. By the 14th century, France imposed the gabelle, a mandatory salt tax. People were forced to buy a fixed amount of salt at inflated prices even if they didn't need it. Smuggling salt became a capital crime. Let that sink in. People were executed. For salt, the poor suffered most. They couldn't afford preserved food. They starved faster. Meanwhile, the elites were exempt from the tax. The gabelle became one of the most hated policies in French history and a major contributor to the French Revolution. When the people rose up, salt was on the list of grievances. India, the British salt monopoly. Centuries later, history repeated itself. The British Empire imposed a salt monopoly in India, forcing millions to buy heavily taxed British salt even though salt was naturally available on Indian shores. In 1930, Mahatma Gandhi led the Salt March, walking 240 miles to the sea to make salt illegally. It wasn't just symbolic, it exposed how empires maintained control, not by gold or guns alone, but by controlling necessities. Fallout when salt lost its throne, so what changed? Why isn't salt valuable anymore? Technology. Refrigeration eliminated the need for salt preservation. Global trade made salt abundant. Industrial mining collapsed scarcity. Salt didn't lose importance, it lost leverage. Once everyone could access it cheaply, it stopped being a tool of control. But history didn't end. The system simply found a new salt. Failed fixes replacing salt with modern necessities. Every era has its version of salt. Today, it's not crystals. It's energy, money, credit, data, just like salt. These are essential, unequally distributed, controlled by centralized systems. Governments no longer tax salt to fund power. They tax income, inflate currency, and control credit. The mechanism changed. The logic didn't. Modern parallels. The shocking pattern, think about it. Salt was once necessary for survival, controlled by the state, taxed heavily to fund empires. Now replace salt with electricity, fuel, housing, digital money. When energy prices rise, economies collapse. When credit tightens, people suffer. When inflation hits, savings dissolve. In 2024, over 80% of countries are in debt. Central banks create money from nothing. The average worker saves less than ever. Gold still exists, but like salt, it no longer controls the system. The real power lies in controlling what people cannot live without. The deeper truth, why salt matters today. Salt teaches us a disturbing lesson. Value is not about rarity. It's about dependence. Gold is rare, but you can live without it. Salt was common, but you couldn't survive without it. The same principle applies today. The most powerful assets are not the ones you desire, they're the ones you cannot escape. Final takeaways. Takeaway 1. The most valuable resources are not luxuries, they are necessities. Takeaway 2. Whoever controls essential systems controls society, regardless of money or ideology. Takeaway 3. Every era replaces old tools of control with new ones, but the structure remains unchanged. Warning and open-ended thought. History doesn't repeat because people forget facts. It repeats because systems evolve faster than awareness. Salt lost its power only when technology broke the monopoly. So ask yourself, what is today's salt, and who controls it? Call to action. If you want to understand money, power, and control beyond surface-level economics, subscribe to this channel. Because the most dangerous systems are not hidden in shadows, they're hidden in plain sight, disguised as everyday necessities. And once you see them, you can't unsee them.